Hello, everybody, and welcome back to my channel, and welcome back to this studio. This is a quick little intro about the video that you're about to see, which is an interview between Vickie Leigh Krudwig, who is my mother, and I that we had back at the end of November of 2024. So please enjoy this conversation where we talk about art, creativity, fear, and my mother's new workbook, Spiritual Alchemy, which is actually currently available on her website. So you're gonna hear, hi Rowan, you're gonna hear us saying, oh, it'll be available soon. The PDF worksheet is available at harmonyhousestudio.com. So if you are interested in any of that, please head over to harmonyhousestudio.com and you can get any of the things that we talk about here in this video. Otherwise, please sit back and enjoy. It is a long one, but I cut as much as I can cut without it losing its cohesion. So please go ahead and enjoy this conversation with Vickie Leigh Krudwig. Hi everybody, and welcome back to my channel, and welcome back to not my studio. I am here with Vickie Leigh Krudwig. She is an artist, an author, and an illustrator, and also happens to be my mother. I am here for the holidays in November of 2024, so that's when we're having this conversation. And I thought that we could have a conversation about you, your history, and then about a workshop, a workbook that you have coming out in the new year, as well as some of your projects.
Okay.
So
a long time.
I know you've been doing this for a while. We have our coffee, yes, which is a staple in our family. We are big coffee drinkers. But I figure, why don't you introduce yourself? How did you get your start in art and illustration?
Okay.
And just a little bit about your history.
Okay. I think I've always had an interest in art. Ever since I was a little girl, I wanted to be an artist. And I always wanted to take art classes. So when the art cart came down the hallway at school, I was thrilled. I have dyslexia and a vision impairment, so I did not do well in reading and mathematics and things, but art was one of my top subjects. As I got older, I was more interested in boys and not art. Took a few art classes in high school and then got busy raising kids, getting married, raising children. And it wasn't until I had children that I started telling stories to my kids about spiders and making up things for them, and got very interested in writing for children. And so I started going to the Society of Children's Writers and Illustrators, and really enjoyed that, and it was very inspiring. And so I started doing self-publishing projects with friends, and one was Frank Kramer, Cats, Dogs, Bugs, and Frogs, a little poetry book.
Classic.
Still going strong. And then I just started taking art classes. I'd been afraid to take art classes. I had not had any college, except maybe one or two. And decided that it might be time when my kids were a little older to start going to college. And so I took classes at Front Range Community College. Mm-hmm. As you know, I have my supplies and stuff going out the door all the time. And I really fell in love with art. And so I did that off and on, just between kids and financial situations. And then in 2000, I had a dream about a Ute woman who was the wife of Chief Ray, a Ute, Tabi-Watch Ute in Colorado. And I would end up writing her biography, and then in addition, start looking at my art in a very different way. And it became very spiritual. And my art teacher, Homari Aikita, a wonderful artist in himself, encouraged me not to just do the still lifes that I was doing, like corn or a piece of pottery, but to tap into the spiritual side of my artwork. And I did that. And I would come into class very still and quiet and meditate. And lo and behold, the images started pouring out. And every painting was different. None of them were the same. And so that has been my catalyst to keep moving forward and showing up in my studio and letting whatever ancestor shows up. Sometimes my paintings feel like they have a life of their own. And I've had nights where I came down here and it just felt a little crowded.
For sure. Can you describe a little bit about your personal evolution in art? Like, where did you start? I know you did a lot of pen and ink early on, and like you mentioned, still lives and assemblages.
Right. My first art class was with Barbara Presscorn at Front Range, and it was, gosh, I think I was like 24. And I had attended classes there, and we were going to do still lifes.
Mm-hmm.
And I was terrified. And I had this little tiny tablet because it was safe, and I was sketching in it. And she asked me what I was doing, and then she told all the other students to move, and she came out from the art closet with a huge piece of paper and said, "Fill this paper." And I just about, passed out. But
blank canvas syndrome.
Yes, and I started painting, and I started doing that, and something just clicked. And it was a very spiritual experience for me because I was using both hands at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
I was listening to music at the point, and something just switched gears, and then it was like I was free. And everything I created wasn't great, wasn't always spiritual looking. But I started working in pen and ink and a lot of pencil sketching, and then took a class with Melissa Tangler in portraiture painting. And I still need to work on that one. But I started discovering watercolor mediums, mixed mediums, collage, 2D design, 3D design, which I really liked. And then I started going into acrylics and oil painting just recently, and I really like that. The acrylics allow me to have a lot of color and texture.
Mm-hmm. And it dries quicker, so you can play a little bit more.
Well, and you can cover up mistakes when they happen.
Yeah, oils are not forgiving.
No, I get them muddy often. But I think it was just this evolution of trying different things, learning how to look at perspective. I used to have perspective. I don't quite have that now because of the eye issue. But it changed the way that I was observing life and observing art. And everywhere I go, I've always seen an image in my head, a painting, a drawing, or, oh my gosh, this would make a great children's book, or maybe this would be a great book for a prayer, or, things like that. So I'm very, very keen on paying attention. And I've also written, oh my gosh, I don't know how many poems that are tucked away right now.
Yeah.
But this is the year coming up. But I'm going to get those poetry put out.
Thinking a similar thing.
Yeah. So it's just time. I've hidden a lot of what I've done. I've hid my abstract side of myself. And then I do the ancestors for a while, and then I'll go into watercolor landscapes or acrylic landscape.
Mm-hmm.
And then sometimes I come in and I just create boxes, my little spiritual boxes and altars. So my art is really expanded. But every bit of it, no matter what I'm doing, whether it's a assemblage, whether it is a landscape or an acrylic figure, one of my ancestral paintings, whatever it is, I have a very deep spiritual connection to it. They almost paint themselves. And because you pray before you do it, and you pray throughout it. You try to pray throughout it. Sometimes it doesn't work.
Sometimes there's some cursing instead of praying.
Yes. Sometimes you just get a little frustrated, and then I always have to say, "Excuse me, I'm sorry." But the fact is that I keep showing up, and I keep asking for guidance, and I open my heart and my mind for that. And for the longest time, I think my art. Here's another way it evolved: is my art was centered around my father's artwork. And my father was an artist when he was in his 20s, and then he got busy with kids and put it aside. And he came from a family where artists were lazy, no good, kind of like beatnik people. And
starving artists,
which we were starving even if we had other jobs. But the fact is he was an artist, but he hid that, and he kept it away from himself. But he wrote. He was a writer for Gazette Telegraph in Colorado Springs. And I always wanted to be like him, paint like him. And then every time I showed him a piece of art or writing, I was waiting for him to say it was wonderful. But he usually would say it needs work. And I didn't have my own design. I didn't have my own voice through my artwork, if you understand.
Yeah, your own style, your own voice.
Right.
Yeah.
You understand that through your weaving.
For sure. Yeah. I think we often we take the stimuli that we get from our family, from teachers, from our friends and what's around us, and we start pulling that together and trying to make something like someone else.
Yeah.
When really you just kind of need to step back and let your own voice come through.
That's correct.
Which is hard and scary sometimes.
Yes. Well, and people look at you. When I started doing my figures of the ancestors, and I loved my dad. He's gone now for about 10 years, but I loved my father. But I showed him one of my figures with all my little symbols in there, and it was kind of this crazy patchwork of Native American petroglyph images that were repetitious. And I'm a Klimt lover. I love Klimt and I love Kandinsky, possibly Kandinsky. So I would create images based on that and then add my ancestors. And, my father once said, I'd be curious to think what a psychologist would think of this. And that shook me up. I thought, they think I'm crazy, and, that was a word that I was most afraid of, is someone thinking that I had a mental illness.
Right, which
because
there's
of
a whole
artwork.
stigma around that.
There is.
Yeah.
And so I was very fearful about what people thought of me mentally. And one sister even asked if I'd had a mental breakdown. Because, I was communicating with my art, communicating with the ancestors, and not everybody gets it. And that's okay.
Yeah.
Some people are Methodist, Catholic, Buddhist, Hindu. It doesn't matter.
None of the above.
Yeah. So I did these paintings, and a lot of my work, the images that have come from my work with the Native American communities, the indigenous cultures. And I worked with Chipeta's descendants and worked with the Ute people of Colorado and the Ute Indian Museum. And that was a very visceral experience for me, because everywhere I go, even today, I feel the presence that was here a long time ago.
Yeah, I mean, we're still on ancestral land.
Right.
Everywhere in the U.S., we're on ancestral land.
Absolutely. And I don't forget that. Every time I go out and look out at the south or the east on my back deck, I never forget that my home is on ancestral lands.
Yeah.
And that really changed the way that I did art. And then I had the privileges of meeting, many, many tribal leaders and chiefs and spiritual leaders. And they talked a lot about my art and felt that some of it was even part of a prophecy. The things that I was painting that I did not understand, they understood clearly. And sometimes you don't have to know what you're painting. What you have to know is, right.
Yeah,
isn't that true? You don't have to have all the answers.
Yeah.
I feel that way. And I think that by letting it go and just letting whoever shows up to help you along the way, I think it's pretty interesting to see what happens. I never know how a painting is going to finish.
Yeah.
I get up in the mornings and I sketch, or if I can. I don't do it as often because I have issues with muscle control. I have a neurological disorder, as you know.
Yeah.
And so it's affected vision and it affects muscle control. So I do sketch when I can. And when I have ideas, I either record them in my phone. I have a telephone, they still call it cell phone journal.
Oh,
I don't know what to call it, telephone journal.
Sure.
And then I have a little journal that you gave me, that I keep sketching in. And I have these ideas, and I'll just see one figure or two. Sometimes it's three. But I'm very aware of numbers. In my artwork, sometimes I'll be told to do 8 figures, which to me is affinity. It's, everything has specific meaning to me.
Yeah.
And 4 is the 4 directions, the 4 seasons of life. I just really believe in that, and the 4 corners of the earth and the different races.
When would you say that your art settled into your current voice, like what you're painting now, these very, the mix between geometric and organic shapes.
Right.
When do you think that both spiritually and timeline wise, when did that happen for you?
Oddly, I think that just in the last few years. I've been painting since 2000, off and on. And even before that, I was dabbling. And then 2005 is when I started doing the spiritual paintings, and I would dabble and I'd keep doing them. But it's just been in the last few years that I've really stepped into this very deep and spiritual place. And I guess that's where my workshop title came from, Spiritual Alchemy, because it feels like all of the good, the bad, and the ugly of everything that I've been through in my life has melded into one way of expressing it, and that is through my canvas, through my assemblages, through my writing. And so I think that is what's happened, is just in a few years.
What do you think changed for you to let yourself kind of tap into that spirit? Or Elizabeth Gilbert talks about, like, in Big Magic, she talks about the little ideas that pop into your head.
Yes, the spiritual.
So you started listening, it seems.
Right. And she believes that these ideas that come to each of us, whether you're a songwriter, a dancer, a playwright, a writer, a potter, a weaver like yourself, or a fiber artist, or whatever, any medium that you feel creative in.
Scientists.
Science. You're darn right. Yeah. All of that is part of this. And her belief was that these little spiritual beings are ideas that come to us, and they're blessed. They're given us an opportunity to respond to them, and we can accept it and move into what we're being shown, or we can say, not me, because I felt that way when I was writing Searching for Chipeta. Is I thought that dream I had was so distinct and showed me very many things. But I remember thinking when I woke up, not me, I'm a white lady. I can't do it. Which is an
important thing to think about.
It is. I had to think about, I'm this Caucasian lady, and what do I know about Native American history, except what I learned in grade school, and believe me, it was not an accurate history.
Different. I mean, still.
Right. Yeah. And so I had this, it took me 6 months of arguing with myself, being fearful, being anxious about it. And then I finally decided to reach out to the museum. And then I asked for a sign. I wanted a specific sign for this project. And we were out hiking, and my niece brought me a bone awl from a woman's toolkit, Native American. Yeah. I ended up donating it to the Ute Museum, but it was over 500 years old.
Yeah.
They determined. And I remember thinking, you can't get a better sign than that. And I think sometimes we're waiting for these, hit on the head, that we're going to have this big sign and the light's going to come down from heaven. But sometimes it's a nudge.
Sometimes it's pulling a card off the street.
That's right. Yeah.
So a few years ago, do you feel like something shifted in you that allowed you to say yes to your current? Because it definitely seems like you've leaned more into the core spiritual part of your work.
I have. It's interesting you say that, because I haven't really, I think about it, but I haven't really thought about it. And
that's what I'm here for right now.
In 2018 or 2017, my husband and I decided to take a road trip. It was 2018. We did a road trip to Santa Fe, and I'd always wanted to go. And I was really scared to go because we hadn't traveled much together. And I had my myasthenia gravis, muscle weakness. I couldn't see well. And I was so afraid, and I was tired of being sick and weak. This illness has really affected me, and not just physically, but sometimes emotionally. And
for sure.
And I have an anxiety disorder that's been with me ever since I was a kid. So
cheers.
Yes, there you go. It's something we didn't talk about when I was growing up, but this thing was there. And so we got up, and my husband was going to go on a hike, and I was getting weak from the trip and weaking from hiking. And we were climbing up to Table Rock, at the very top of the rock where you can look down on Georgia's land and everything. And he said, I can just leave you here on the trail and go on up, and I'll meet you. And all I could think of was, I don't want to be down here if some critter comes after me, bear or mountain. So I said, no, I'll do it. And I climbed. My husband was so patient, and we climbed together, and we got on the top of this vista, I guess is what they call them. And I looked out, and I made this video of myself. I went in a circle, and I said, at that point, I was claiming who I was, and I was claiming my health. I was claiming my love for art. I was claiming what the ancestors had taught me. And I no longer wanted to be sick, that I wouldn't own being sick anymore. I am sick, but I'm not letting it rule me or stop me from doing art, or I just don't know any better. And that, I think, is a catalyst right there. And I came home, and I had this vigor for art and feeling the Southwest. It's in my bones. And we went to Alchemy and seeing these old ruins and seeing these rock formations and see how the Southwest has inspired artists from all around the world.
Yeah.
And so I came back with just an absolute gung-ho vision. Georgia O'Keeffe had this thing that she said she'd always been terrified every minute of her life, but she did things anyways.
Yeah.
So it never stopped her from living. And I think that is one of the most crucial things we can do, is even when we're afraid, it shouldn't stop us from fulfilling or at least trying to do art or see how you feel when you're processing it. Because if I could paint what I really see or feel.
Gosh, that's what we all wish we could do, right? What we really see and hear. And
it's just like, whoa.
Yeah.
And then you go in there and it's like, oh, that's not even close. But the exciting thing is it's our vision. It's what has come out of us.
It's our vision, and then what our body can do to make that happen.
Absolutely.
And I think that so many of us, especially early on in our artist career,
absolutely,
I think get frustrated when we think that we're not being true to our vision that's in here. Like you think that you can do a portrait that's perfect, right?
Absolutely.
And it comes out imperfect because we are imperfect.
Well, yeah.
And that takes a while to accept.
Exactly.
You know?
And I remember when I was doing all these dot paintings, I love dots. And dots are spiritual. They are a moment in time. A dot represents a moment of prayer uttered on our lips, thinking of somebody, gratitude. Every time I put a dot down, I'm thinking, and they're crooked. But they move. They have motion. I've learned to see that as the perfect of imperfection.
Yeah.
Because these dots are moving prayers when I'm putting them down, and they are set on paper. They are from my heart, and whoever owns the painting, it's a prayer for them. It's a prayer for whoever looks upon that painting. And that's how I pray when I'm doing my artwork. And so I can remember one of my family members saying, "Oh, I'll be glad when you're done doing those dot paintings." And I felt a little offended.
Yeah.
And of course, we were at a gallery and my art was hanging and it started selling. And that person said, "Oh, you just need to keep going," because they equated
good with purchasing.
There you go.
With
money.
Financial stability.
With money.
Yeah. Which a lot of artists do feel that pressure.
Right. And if I'm honest, I struggle. As you know, this week I was worried because, it's been a lean year this year.
Yeah.
And the last few years have been incredible sales for the artwork. And I'm trying not to tie my self-worth to the monetary issues. You don't paint for money. I don't like doing commissions.
I'm looking at my audience.
Okay. So me too, because we get wrapped up in, oh my God, if we don't do a good job, they're not going to like it. We're getting money for it. And then we're suddenly very insecure. I don't paint for money. I paint for myself, and I paint for the ancestors, and I paint for whatever creature or thing is showing up in my studio, or the little spirit ideas that come into my head. I show up for them, and I'm prepared, and I love it. It is a freeing feeling. I needed this today.
Yeah, no, I'm excited to have this conversation.
I had a little bit of a scare because, our economy's been very different this year. Yeah. And we've had a lot of family hospitalizations and loss of life. Yeah. So it's been a really rough year. But through it all, what has gotten me through even my illness and my bad eyes is my artwork.
Yeah.
It's a healing thing for me.
It's a meditation. It's medicine.
Yeah, it is medicine.
Yeah. I completely agree. And it's funny, you were talking about the dots being a little moment in time and a little prayer. And that's very similarly how I feel when I hand stitch.
Oh, I'll bet.
Because you have to do each stitch by hand, or each stitch one at a time. You can't just, zoom through. You have to go methodically if you're going to do it well.
Well, and that puts you in the present moment, right? And that's where spirituality, I think, exists mostly. Yeah. We can talk about future and we can talk about the past, but one thing I think with my art is I've been more in the present.
You have to be.
With my art. I'm not thinking, oh, I hope this sells. That's how I used to do art.
Sometimes.
Yeah, you had this idea like, oh, I'm going to sell this and make $1 million. But but it's, it's only in the movies sometimes, or you have to wait like Van Gogh did and
die.
And
Yeah.
then your art sells.
Yeah, your sister-in-law.
And he was tortured. He was tortured because of that, because people judged him by, his inability to make money, to have an income, to have a real job. And I think we have to be true to ourselves.
Yeah.
I have had jobs where I was miserable, and I was working for a very, very famous photographer. And they hired me because I'd sold a bunch of my own books. But they purchased one of my books to publish. And they asked me later, would you like to work? And I did 6 months. And I realized I don't want to work and put all of my energy into their creativity. And it wasn't appreciated by some of the other authors I worked for. And it wasn't my ego. It's just that my spirit said no. We have to know when to say no.
Yep.
And walk away from something that isn't conducive to what we are doing, where we're going on our creative journey. Does that make sense to you? It
makes 100% sense. We could talk for like 10 hours about everything. I do want to pick up on something that's kind of come up a couple of times in this conversation already, and something that you do touch on. Actually, why don't we talk about spiritual alchemy for a second, to then talk about what I want to talk about. So spiritual alchemy, this nice printout PDF currently, it will be online at Harmony House Art Studio, harmonyhousestudio.com. I'll double check that URL again. I'm pretty sure
it is harmonyhousestudio.com.
So spiritual alchemy has kind of been in the works for a while.
A long time.
But you really fully put it into kind of fruition last year. In 2023, you did some of your first workshops for it. Mm-hmm. And for those of you who are an artist or familiar with it, there are workbooks like by Julia Cameron, The Artist Way. Yes. This is like another branch of that, another evolution of that from your perspective.
Right.
And your experience.
Right.
And it's about tapping into your own spirituality, your own creativity. And we're not talking about like religion.
No.
But so much as like your own personal spirit.
Right.
And what you resonate with. Right. So in this, you do talk about fear. And you talked a few times about, I was afraid of the paper, the big paper. I was afraid to do this.
Right. Fear.
Where do you think that fear comes from for you?
I think it's
sorry, I know that's a heavy question.
Okay. I think for me personally, I didn't want my father to tell me it needed work again, or kind of give me and I loved my dad, but he would smirk sometimes when my sister would read a poem or something. And he wasn't mean. It's just that, I think he himself had issues with his own art and insecurity. And I think sometimes our critics or people that we love sometimes don't want us to get hurt. They're afraid that we're going to get hurt if we try to go out and sell a painting that they think isn't up to par.
Right.
Or that our writing isn't up to par. And so I think sometimes they hold us back and they make us feel a little anxious, or they'll say, they'll roll their eyes or kind of give a little smirk, or
so kind of like rejection.
Right. It's a sense of rejection. And we pick up on these nuances. Kids do.
For sure.
When our little kids are doing something, I've seen parents just go, you could have done better.
Or finally.
Right. And to me, that's one of the most destructive things we can do for an artist or anybody that's expressing creativity. And I grew up with a fear of failure, a fear of being vulnerable. That's the one thing I've learned. I have learned that more in the last 2 years is vulnerability. I can't even pronounce it. My tongue.
Same.
Because I could not. I was scared of really opening my heart. That's when I wrote my autobiography. I had it finished in 2013. And I started it in 2007, and I kept putting it away. And now I know why I put it away, because it wasn't ready to come out into the world. But I was so worried about what people would think, because I got very personal there about my journey with depression, loss of 2 babies, watching my sister with abuse. So a lot of this fear carried over into my family. My parents were very fearful people.
Yeah.
I didn't think we were, but we did grow up in a very fearful home. And so I think that putting yourself out there makes you vulnerable. I still get nervous about sharing my things on Facebook. And this is really exciting and scary to go out onto YouTube.
Yeah.
but it's something I've wanted to do for years, and I really appreciate you doing this. But fear is what holds us back. And like George O'Keeffe said, she's been afraid all of her life, but she still did the things to push her art forward. Her art, there's nothing like that anywhere else in the world. It's her art, Sorry.
You're fine.
It's her art. It's a Georgia O'Keeffe when you see it. And she lived and breathed that, even though she might have had moments of fear or feeling vulnerable.
Yeah.
And I think that whether we're songwriters or anybody else, when we hold back on that, are you all right?
Yeah, no, okay. I'm listening and just...
and so I think that we have to manage the fear, and we don't have to get rid of it because sometimes we just can't. It just shows up at the worst time.
Especially if you have an anxiety disorder. Sometimes it just happens.
Sometimes I'll be working and I'll hear, what in the hell do you think you're doing? Pardon the expression. But once in a while, that little ugly, fearful person, the critic, gets in there and reminds me that I shouldn't be doing something so wild or so deep, or, and who do you think you are? And you become fearful because then you think everybody's thinking that way, and it's not true. You have to follow your own journey. And I think if some of us are really honest, we know deep down inside when we are doing the right thing.
Yep. When
we are hitting our mark. And I will ask the viewer, have you ever had a time when you've got an idea and you feel this excitement just bubble up? I mean, it is overflowing and you feel it. I get it in the crown of my head, and it moves all throughout your body.
Feels like a pull.
It is. It's a pull. Yeah. And you get so excited and you get gung-ho and you get your things together. You start writing your song, you start playing on the guitar, or you start doing dance steps or creating your sewing project or whatever. And then all of a sudden you have this momentum. I call it the creative rush. Spiritual creative rush.
That's a good way to put it.
And then all of a sudden something happens and it's like you hit a wall and we just freeze because the critic comes in and says, what are you doing? They don't want you to move that forward. And that's when we have to really pay attention to our inner conversation and what made you excited about it. Why did it feel right to you? What were you doing when this idea came to you? And were you passionate about it? Because we have to ask ourselves, are we passionate about what we're creating?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. A former mentor of mine and my ex's, Carol Kirkpatrick, she had a phrase that was, feel the fear, but do it anyway.
Right.
And it means it's okay to feel the fear. Like, fear is a natural feeling. It's one of the first responses that we have as an animal. That comes from back here in the
fight
animal hand brain.
Absolutely.
Fight, flight, freeze, or fawn are like the 4 F's, right?
Right.
And I think many of us freeze or we flee.
Right.
And we run away from our art.
Right.
I've done it. I've certainly run away from my art when I thought like, people don't like this, or someone is thinking a certain way of me because of this. I'm going to run away from it.
Right.
But I pulled a piece here from your own workbook that is also from a mentor that you had for a long time, and then in turn mentored me and my elder sister, Frank Kramer, who has also sadly passed during the pandemic.
Yeah.
And it's a quote from him that says, "Go ahead and hide your talents, Vickie," he said to me, "but you rob the world of your gifts when you do." And I think that's, I just got chills saying that again.
I know, my hair just went.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing, is when we feel afraid, it's important for us to feel it and move forward because we are giving gifts to the world. We're healing the world with what we do. And I was just thinking about part of your legacy, your history. I mean, you still have plenty of years left on this planet.
I plan on it.
I was just thinking how many thousands of kids and adults you've taught how to illustrate, how to paint, how to write. And that's a network that now is all over the world. And I think that's if you hadn't done that, if you had kept it all to yourself, there are people that you've probably saved some lives. Like,
well, I'd like to think I have.
Well, I mean,
I think that we don't realize the sharing of ourselves. When I used to do school visits, I don't do anymore because of the myasthenia gravis and the vision impairment.
Yeah.
But when I would visit school, I'd always say a prayer and ask that I touch at least one student that really needed it, or one teacher, or one parent, or one adult member in my audience if I was talking about Native American history. And if that happened, that was enough.
Mm-hmm.
Because one person is like the ripple effect.
Yeah.
You know, and it changes. And my father was this way. He was in AA, and he drank. He was alcoholic from the age of 13. And by the time he was 16, he was full-blown alcoholic. And he ended up going to prison for 1 year, tried to steal a camera so he could get that drink. But he was an artist and a writer, but he put all of that away. And he just lived kind of a sad life for a long time. And he finally found sobriety while he was in prison, and then went out into the world and opened up a whole National Council on Alcoholism. He worked there. He opened the first halfway house in Denver. And so his life, his path led him to all kinds of things. And it was during that time that he was reaching out to other people at the halfway house. Years later, he started really doing his paintings in earnest.
Mm-hmm.
And those paintings, he passed away in 2015. His paintings, even 3 weeks before he died, he was painting. And it kept him going, but they took on a very spiritual, very ethereal quality.
Very ethereal quality, yeah.
The colors, the lines in there, you can see the movement of his body and soul through that painting. And I've got that one. But we underestimate what it is that we have to offer. We underestimate the power of voice. We really underestimate what it takes to encourage another person to write their story, whether it's a song or through the arts or through your weaving. When I look at your weaving and your designs, it's like joy. It is. I've watched my son do this for a long time, where he has actually spun wool. I mean, he was creative from the time you were born. My kids were all holding pencils when they were like 1 or 2.
How did this interview get turned back on me? Wait.
But my point is, being a parent, I saw the value in creativity. Yeah. And I never wanted to stop my kids from being creative. And my husband was the same way. We didn't want our kids. And I think, when you went to college, you started doing sciences.
Yeah, I went.
You remember?
Wait, how are we getting?
We're having this conversation about fear.
Yeah, I started in science and I chose my major before I even graduated high school because I was expected, not necessarily from family, but I had put these pressures on myself, thinking that this was what was expected of me, was to go to college and get a good job. And I was always interested in science and in the natural world. So it wasn't like, I felt forced to do it. But once I got into school and I realized that academia, science, is not the part that I was interested in. It was the connections between living things. It was the ecosystems. It was how the natural world interacts and how we interact with the natural world, which is important.
Right, I it is an art.
Still loved getting that degree.
It's the same way in art.
Yeah.
Art making.
Yeah. It's about connection. It's about how we interact with the world and how we as humans perceive the world, which is also very important.
Oh gosh, yes. Yeah.
We have recorded history. We have the only reason we know about our past is through art. Like petroglyphs, the caves in Lascaux,
and the songs, the music, and the drumming. Right now, I'm working with Cheyenne and Arapaho tribes in Oklahoma, helping them write books for their children. And one of the biggest cultural things that they've carried on for centuries is the music and storytelling that passed on from one generation to another to another.
Yeah.
And that's the power of the arts. That's the power of creativity and basketry and hide paintings. And
beading.
Yes.
Weaving.
Oh my gosh.
I mean...
Regalia
Yeah.
is self-expression. So I think that's it. I can remember a conversation in a parking lot with you because I was well on my way to my painting, my art, feeling it. And as a parent, you want your kids to succeed out of college and be self-sufficient and hold it, you're laughing.
Yeah.
But we put pressure on our kids, and here they I kept feeling like he was unhappy.
Yeah.
And we haven't even pulled out of the driveway. He'd been mixing paint at a big department store.
Yeah.
Home office. What do you call that? Home supply.
Home decor. Like I worked at Lowe's.
Yeah,
guys.
he worked at Lowe's.
I don't mind name dropping.
I couldn't know if you could say that. I
love my job. And it was actually one of the few ways that I felt my creative outlet is because I got to help other people decorate their homes. I got to help people garden. Like that.
I loved
was
it too because I got discounts and I got all the mixed paints that I could pour.
I didn't do it on purpose.
No.
Okay.
But other people,
But yeah, and I remember that conversation a little bit where I was scheduled to graduate early. I would have done college in 3.5 years.
Yeah.
But I had felt that if I hadn't taken the arts, I would have been unhappy and I would have regretted it.
Yeah.
And the only way to take any art classes at CU were either to take them really late at night, which I couldn't do because I had other extracurricular activities. It was to become an art major.
Right.
And instead of becoming an art minor, I became an art major, and I would never take that back.
Right.
I had a hard time with certain professors that tried to, get me to do art their way.
Right. Their way. Yeah, absolutely.
Or would rip apart a piece in critique and be a little traumatic. But the experience of being with other creative individuals, being able to just spend an hour and a half in a class and just do was so instrumental for me. And yeah, it took another 1.5 years, but I wouldn't take that back at all.
No, and I think you were so much happier after because you were very upset about sharing it with us and telling us about it. But as soon as we got home, the mom blabbed to the dad, and my husband said, "I just want you to be happy."
Yeah. Oof.
And I think we have the people in our lives that are so fearful we're going to fail, or they want you to make money, so you have a lot of money, and they'd rather you stay in a job that you don't feel connected to or passionate about. Mm-hmm. And we have to have those things to live and pay rent.
Yeah, because not all of us are privileged to just do art.
Right. It's not a privilege, but if you can work it in. And I think that is my whole thing. I remember needing to quit a job. I had taken a job in 2012 to help pay bills and college loans. And but I was still painting on the weekends and trying to use creativity at work as well, which was a good outlet. I worked for seniors, about 295 senior citizens, and it was lovely. But I remember being terrified to quit, and I knew I took a medical leave of absence because I had had a surgery that same year in 2019 or 17, but it still hadn't gone well, and I was having a lot of eye pain, so I quit. And I was terrified because I was going to give up a really good salary. But I also had a dream and a message in the dream that I belonged in an art studio and needed to follow my art journey, my creativity to as long as I could and follow the road there. And it's probably when my abstract art came out, because we were during COVID and we were having our basement finished. And
early 2020 and 2021.
Yeah, Ben had moved, and I was devastated about that.
Sorry,
but I knew deep down that I was fearful of him leaving, but deep down inside, I knew it was time for him to strike out into the world, and that he belongs to the world, not to me. Mm-hmm. I gave birth; I'm his vessel to carry him into the world, but he was destined to be in California, where he is going crazy with creativity and doing all kinds of awesome things. And I think that it allowed me to stay at the kitchen table and do all these abstract paintings because I was kind of limited.
Yeah, you were doing smaller pieces.
During COVID, I did almost 125 quick abstract pieces that I absolutely loved. And I remember thinking, these feel spiritual. This art feels spiritual, these wiggles and squiggles and dots. And all of a sudden I understood that Kandinsky and all of these wonderful Jackson Pollock, these were spiritual issues that they were dealing with. They were feeling their artwork. It was deep and soulful, Klimt, soulful. And so to me, that's when it really clicked. And then I get my studio done and I started painting my dot paintings and did a few of those at the kitchen table and the breakfast bar. We had paint everywhere.
Yeah.
But I just think that I was meant to do this. And I finally relented and decided to embrace it and not run from it.
Yeah, you pushed through the fear and
Yeah.
you were able to settle in.
Right. And now I'm comfortable. I'm very comfortable with accepting these challenges from spirit and comfortable with my decision to be an artist and to be the writer and to share things. And not everybody in my family agrees with me. They'll just like, why do you need to do that? You know, but I love them and I don't need to explain myself anymore to anybody. I think if you're writing a certain song or you've got a play you want to write about your life or a one-man band thing or, you know, whatever it is, you do it because you're being called to do it.
Yeah.
Spirit has come to you specifically to do something specific in the creative arts. And this, I'm telling you, artistry also comes in the home, how we decorate a home.
For sure.
Drafting. So I think no matter what your job is, whether you're a director at a retirement community or not, everything should be artistry. I think that we need to stop worrying about corporate linear thinking all the time and go off on these little spiritual tangents that relate to human beings, relate to your inner self, right? Where you feel that, because when you're working on something and it's not hitting, I always love it when someone says, oh, they'll call you and say, I know what you need to paint.
Have you tried making this?
No.
Have you tried doing this?
Oh, I used to go on those tangents. I would have all these ideas and I'd be painting fine and someone would say, you know what you need to paint? And I'd go, oh, they're right. And I'd go paint it and it would be like nothing. Like, no feelings about it, nothing. And we've all had something like that happen where you ought to...
Or this is the hot thing right now.
Right.
This is the trend. I'm going to make it.
Yeah, forget trends. Forget what other people think you should be doing. Think about what you want to do and register it by how you're feeling internally. If you're feeling good and you feel whole, that's a real good indicator that you're on the right track to your creative journey.
Well, there's something, in my opinion, that, and I know we should wrap up this portion.
Right.
When you're feeling like that, when you're in the creation of the work, you know, sometimes I believe soulmates aren't just like people that you love.
Right.
But when you're putting out a piece of artwork that comes from your soul, that can attach to another person's soul and heal them and be the right thing for them at that moment. And I think that's so powerful that it connects us.
Yeah,
you know?
I had a
strangers.
I watched Inside Out too.
Yeah.
I cried like a baby.
Oh, Inside Out 1, I cried so hard.
Yeah, I did not understand what was happening and why I was feeling this way. But it was this person that was imperfect. And they had a lot of anxiety like I did. But I grew up where it wasn't okay. And then all of a sudden, everybody, all of these different emotions gathered around that person to say, you're okay. We love you. We love you anyways, and you're okay. You're going to be okay. And this is how art is. Love yourself. Love what you're doing. Embrace other artists, invite them to your home, have coffee, talk about the arts. If you do critic work, you know, where you have a critique, do it in a very constructive way and ask questions from the artist, because you'll learn so much from the artist about what they're thinking and feeling.
Yeah.
People have two reactions to my art. They look at it and walk past it very quickly, like, and then there are others that they'll be walking and then they stop and they'll stare, they get close, and they stay there for a long time. And that's when I know my art is speaking to them.
Yeah. And we're not for everybody.
No.
That's okay.
Yeah. Some venues are not for me. So I don't worry about that anymore. I try not to. I do a little bit this week, okay?
And I was actually going to mention is like, none of this is linear.
No.
You know, and the journey to self-discovery and self-love and being non-fearful is not a linear straight line.
No,
I have moments of anxiety all the time that I need to use my own words or your words against you sometimes. Sorry.
Yes, that's okay.
But it's a practice.
It is.
It's a practice.
It
is where you're making those decisions over and over again to make sure that you can push past the fear.
I know, I like the word practice makes imperfection perfect.
Oh,
because it really is an imperfect process.
it is. We're imperfect people.
Yeah.
So the process is not going to be perfect for anybody.
Right.
You know? Hello, editing Benjamin here. So at this point in the video, we took a very short break to refill our coffee, and then we had a fairly long conversation about art, aging, and health. We've chosen to cut that from this video only for the sake of giving that maybe its own time and that its own conversation. So please enjoy the rest of this interview. We started talking about creativity and also spiritual alchemy. So please enjoy the rest of this interview with Vickie Leigh Krudwig. Mm-hmm.
So art can be done in a variety of ways.
Yeah, there's no singular way.
No, and for me, even my abstracts are twists and turns and dots and dashes and beautiful blobs that I love them. And I've even gotten into exploring the microscopic world with my art. I did a whole river series, and I did the fish and the frogs and the turtles. And then I started thinking about a miracle of all of these microscopic animals that feed the little tiny, amoeba and protozoa. And all of a sudden it was just like this whole universe in a drop of water. Mm-hmm. And my paintings are the same about space and cosmic matter.
Yeah.
Because we're all made out of this stardust.
I know. I love that we have that piece right behind us. I'll put a close up in.
Yeah, that's using interference paint, where when people walk by it, it flashes and has movement and motion. But it's always a process. And I just finished a new one. This one over here that's even different from these.
Oh yeah.
But I never get tired of exploring, and I'll start out with this concept and I leave it for a day or two after I get the initial sketch on, because that's what my spirit wants. And then I'll come down and stare at it and think, okay, you're going to do this, and we'll just give it a break. And then all of a sudden I sit down to work and it just flows. And I will stay with the painting till it's done sometimes. I'll be down here for hours, 8 to 10 hours, working and working and working. I'll go upstairs, put ice on my eyes, and come back down or eat. But it's just a very cathartic thing, and it's a very healing thing. Mm-hmm. So Carolyn Myss, I never finished saying it, but Carolyn Myss said the soul and the body knows what it needs to. The soul knows what the body needs to do to heal. Mm-hmm. Something like that. I can't remember.
Mm-hmm. If we just stop to listen.
Yeah, if we would just listen and tap into that, because I think living in somebody else's world, mm-hmm. doing something that you do not want to be doing, that mm-hmm. you know isn't for you or isn't right for you, you're going to get sick. It's going to be depression, mm-hmm. anxiety. Mm-hmm. It could be a physical illness with stomach issues. Mm-hmm. Some people start drinking and doing alcohol and drugs. Mm-hmm. And I will say that those aren't the things that are conducive to art making.
Right.
It's listening to yourself and loving yourself enough to be able to do this.
Yeah, and channeling freely.
Right.
Instead of trying to stop the flow.
Right. Here I am.
Yeah.
I open my heart. I open my mind.
Here I am as I am.
Right.
Like, because every day is a little bit different.
Right.
And some days, like, if you are feeling down, maybe you don't want to be in the studio. Right.
That's when you go outside and get outdoors.
When you go outside and go outdoors. I mean, I had that this last week where the projects I had been working on, I was like, it's too much mentally for me to work on these. And so I picked up a smaller project that was easier for me to just sit down with. It was gentle.
Good point. Because I do small paintings that are just real 8 by 10s.
But sometimes you don't have the stamina or the energy to do a big one.
Right. And I think that's the crucial thing is I just come down every day to show up if I can, unless I'm out of town. But even then I bring my journals and I bring something to write in a spiral notebook, because I've had all kinds of ideas for a one-woman play driving down the freeway. I paid attention to the driving, but, and that is something I'm going to seriously consider doing this coming year.
Yeah.
And it's about Chipita. It's about her life and about a woman that she met, Mrs. Charles Adams, and they became very good friends. And I just saw the whole image. It was like, and I know a lot of viewers have done this where they see a whole slideshow.
Oh, yeah.
And business ideas,
Oh, that
everything.
happens
It's just
to me.
boom, boom, boom,
Yeah.
boom, boom. That's when you pull off into a parking lot. Seriously, keep a journal in your car. Keep a journal by your bedside. Because that's how this book came to be, was through a dream that I had. And then, you know, everything, when I followed this dream and followed it, then I met John Inman.
Mm-hmm.
So things have a tendency to propel you forward, and then they connect, and there's synchronicity in the people that you start meeting. And it is very exciting and very energizing. And sometimes, yes, it's a little scary to leave certain things behind to embrace something so new. But I can tell you it is worth every second of it, I think.
Yeah. I mean, I think fear and doing things that make you afraid is where growth happens.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Because if you're not afraid of doing something, then you're safe.
Right.
And
safe.
You're playing it safe. And it doesn't mean like go do things that are super scary or dangerous, but those little things, the talking to your neighbor that you haven't spoken to. Right. Or doing the painting, posting it on Facebook, social media. You know, if you're not leaning into that and, you know, going through the fear, you're not going to grow.
I think art is transcending.
Yeah.
Whatever you're doing, science is transcending. Medical field is an artistry and transcending.
Started with artistry.
Leonardo da Vinci, exploring the body.
Yeah.
But we get into this, we forget that our creativity has been there since the beginning of time, since humans had a brain. And you look at every creature in the world and how colorful they are. And
look at weaver birds.
Yeah, and they're creative. They look for certain colors sometimes. We had a robin that took blues, all blue things, rugs, everything.
Crows love shiny things.
Yeah, and so I can't help but feel that we're all connected to the same universe. We're same cosmos. And so my art is about that. It's about all of us being part of something bigger and amazing, really. It's amazing. I've recently joined the Global Council of Grandmothers for women, elder women. I'm an elder now. And I embrace that because... Yeah.
Well, there's no other option except for not...
No, but we're having this conversation about art and the cosmos and the light workers. And I thought, I always wanted to be a healer. So I'm a Reiki master. I got that done. I thought I was going to do Reiki and massage therapy, and I started going after that. I call it creative U-turn. Julia Camera does.
Yeah.
See, that's where I learned it. Because we avoid going into where we're supposed to be going. So we want to go in 10 different directions. But I decided one day I can use the Reiki colors in my artwork and the Reiki energy in my artwork. And use that. And I don't have to be a healer, hands-on healer, although I have sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
But my work, I've realized for the first time in the last 2 years that my work is healing, that I'm a healer through my artwork. And one of the tribal leaders told me when I finished searching for Chipeta, he said, we think you're a dreamer, a communicator, and a healer. And at first I was like really uncomfortable with that. But just in the last several months, I've decided to own that part of me.
Well, because there's a fear of responsibility too, I think, with that.
Well, and you don't want to be considered a fraudulent or a charlatan, all these wonderful words. But your song is healing. Dance is healing. When I see a person move in the body, I find I'm moved. I am moved to tears when I see a good dancer. Dance. I do too. I wish my feet were better. I still dance when I hurt. And we had fun dancing. But dance is one of the most wonderful forms of self-expression. It's your whole body engaged. And there are artists, and I'm moving more, where you stand up and you move into your artwork. You stand up at your table and you move. And Parkinson's, move. So no matter what we're doing, we can put ourselves into what we're, to our creativity and follow that path forward. And there's some real surprises that show up.
Yeah. Yeah, I know this conversation has taken some surprises, which I've loved. I would love to touch on one more topic before we wrap up, because this this is going to feel like an unfinished interview, but we're going to talk about unfinished work.
Right.
It's not going to be unfinished interview, but so we have some examples here, but frequently we as artists have many unfinished art pieces because we like to work on lots of things. I have lots of them and I have opinions about it.
Right.
So I'd love to talk to you about your perspective on unfinished work, what you're doing currently with it, and like just spitball.
I think I decided I needed to make some income because things were a little tight, and I thought, well, I'm going to get my Etsy store. So I did an Etsy store, and I've been putting that off out of fear because, gosh, that's going to put me out there, and I'll feel vulnerable that people are going to look at my artwork. And sharing with the Global Council of Grandmothers or Facebook, I just afraid someone would call. I don't know what I was afraid of. It's just maybe rejection and vulnerable. So I had all this art in bins, and I had all my abstract paintings that I had not shared with anybody except very few people. I pulled everything out of the storage area. My husband was thrilled because I got it all cleaned up and matted it.
Perks.
I gave it respect. I took some of this unfinished pieces of paper, 120, and I matted them all. Put them in clear bags, labeled them, listed them. And I started finding all these little unfinished paintings. One that I did, this one's from way back in the day. This is one that I just loved, but I didn't know what I was going to do with it, so I put it away. This one was a horse that I started, but I didn't think my horse was good enough, so I put it away.
That's every artist's plight.
Yes, yeah. This is my favorite. This is a mistake, so I blocked it out, and it left this big blob, but I kept it. We've got
we all have piles
a board
like
that
this.
I did in this salmon color, and just like, oh my gosh. And then this was called, I think I called this one Life is But a Dream. And I didn't put a frame on it. This is a George O'Keeffe. This is one that I just felt like it wasn't quite up to par. But I've got a bin right behind Ben that must have about 20 canvases of every shape and size. And I told Ben, and I even had cut up paintings.
Yeah.
So
you sent me a bunch of those, which I'm excited to work on.
Yeah, and I gave them to Ben so he could create something cool with them.
Cool, and I have plans.
And then I decided to make greeting cards with the chopped up paintings and put them in packages and put them, made use of that. And then I gave them new life. And I'm going through systematically now, and I'm working on my big pieces, but I'm taking all my unfinished projects and I'm finishing them one by one. And depending on the day and my eyesight. So this one now I can see a figure on that. So I will go through and work all of these in and then be staying tuned because I'll probably be listing them and showing them before and after.
And I'll post links in the description bar below so people can see your work. And if they want to purchase it, they can. And
I have a brother-in-law that passed away, your Uncle Kent. He was an incredibly talented musician.
Yeah.
And for years he wanted to do music, but he went into business because his folks thought that that's what he needed to do because they were more worried about a good income.
Yeah.
It'll make good money. And but his heart was in country western music and poetry, and he was incredible. And his wife died in 2012, and then a year later he died. Yeah. I'm sure it was a broken heart, but I think the saddest thing for me is he did fulfill a dream of having a CD put out, but he never got to share that CD with the world. Radio stations, going all over. He won a songwriting contest in Nashville, but it was an unfinished dream. And my heart broke. And we're going through his house and we're cleaning out files. And there were reams and folders of lyrics, of words written here and there that were never finished songs, the unfinished song. And it really left an impression on me because he didn't get to it. He was busy caregiving, or he just maybe didn't have the knowledge of what he wanted to put into that particular lyric or song.
Well, not everything needs to be finished.
No, and it doesn't. I have folders galore of poems that are started but not finished yet because it's just not their time. But my point is a lot of you, and excuse me for pointing, but a lot of you have poetry that has been tucked away inside a notebook you have a piece of quilting or something that you started and you suddenly don't think your stitches are even enough or good enough, or that your pottery,
or your points aren't together.
Right. There you go. Well, don't ask me to sew. I don't want to do that. But your pottery's crooked. Your songs, they just sound, or someone else is going to write it, and truthfully, if you don't do what Spirit invites you to do, someone else, it'll go to someplace else and someone else will do it.
Or it'll be gone forever.
It'll be gone forever. And I think that's the biggest thing I could tell anybody is go for it, whether it's perfect or not, because you can take that same song or book or story and write it, get it down, work on it, see it through, and then go back and rework it. Because this book, I finished it in 2013 before your Uncle Kent died. He looked at it. 2 weeks later, he was gone.
Yeah.
And I hadn't had the rest of my life experiences and revelations about my life and introspection to make this book complete.
Yeah.
Until just recently in 2021. And then it was like, and I went through all my journals, and I decided to bare my soul, and it was really scary to do it. But my goal to write this book was to encourage other people to really pay attention to what they have experienced throughout life, how it has shaped them, where you are now, and then where do you think you'd like to be? And then healing. It's about healing yourself, healing the sadness in the past, and letting go so that you can embrace this new creative life. Yeah, and I think that's the other part. It's
not an overnight thing, too. No, you take these baby steps to get there.
Yeah.
It's I love seeing all this stuff. I love unfinished work.
Oh, it's exciting
because you get to see like the behind the scenes part of an artist. Well, but for me, a lot of my unfinished work, because I did a similar clean out a while ago.
Right.
In my studio of sewing projects that I haven't finished, art projects I haven't finished, and I went through each one and I said, "Do you need to be finished, or do you need to be changed?" Because there are some projects that the passion does leave.
Yeah.
And you don't want to finish it anymore because the vision changes or the material isn't working the way that you had wanted it to. And it's really freeing to make those decisions.
Right.
Because those piles of unfinished can feel like a weight.
Right. I've actually taken paintings that I thought were going to be really cool, and they were hard to discern. I couldn't understand them. They were chaotic like me. And I think that's what was happening as I was processing all this chaos and loss, and my job.
That's
quitting.
Another thing, yeah.
And I had decided when I was working on this Walking with Chipita book, I was going through all my journals, and I kept them, and I used that to keep score with the people I loved and my husband. And I thought, well, this happened, and every time we had an argument or I got upset, I would use that against him. Well, it was 2021, and I decided I needed to let it go.
Yeah.
Because it was taking up, they were consuming 40, 50 journals. Yeah. They were consuming space.
Literal space and also spiritual space.
And so I told my husband, I took the shredder downstairs, and I had, 13, 14 bags of shredding.
Yeah.
And I kept taking little bits out of each journal and putting it to the side. So by the time I got done, I had one good size bag of strips and pieces that had writing on them that I would keep for art projects. So I made a jar, which I'll share with the readers one of those days.
I'll take some shots of that.
I did a jar it's my Ellen LaRigby jar.
Oh, gosh.
Because she kept a jar by the side of the door. And and it's about her face and everything. And for me, it's my identity's in that jar, and all the little trinkets I've collected, and the sand from Alchemy Chapel, and all of these trinkets that people have given me. And I put those around the jar in a chain, and ribbons from a Native American friend that gave me a gift with the 4 colors, 4 directions. So all of that's on this jar. And I put it up there, and it just felt so, it's right by the doorway by my studio. So that's my Ellen LaRigby jar. And then I did a painting, taping all this stuff on there, and it was really, really chaotic. And I did finally shred that painting and put it in the trash. But I had to take...
I've done similar things with work where it feels like a release.
It was.
Of trauma, or a release of a weight, where you can just be like, I don't need this anymore. It's not serving me.
Right.
And like, I've ripped up artwork I've burned artwork.
Sure, we all have, I think.
I mean, right after college, I had a wood burning fireplace, and it was my first home with my ex. And I took a night once where I took all this old art that wasn't me.
Right.
It wasn't my artwork. It was what my teachers wanted me to make, and I threw it in the fire.
Yeah.
Not because I was ashamed of it, but because I felt it, like this pressure.
Right.
Of like, this is what you are going to be known for. And I'm like, nah, this isn't my shtick.
Right.
But I think we should give ourselves the freedom that if something's not serving us anymore, it doesn't have to be finished.
Well,
but maybe you should finish it.
Exactly. And we'll show a picture of it later. But I told my husband, I've always wanted to do a bonfire with my journals. When I felt ready to let go. I have been doing counseling and therapy, and I did it years before when I was having these massive anxiety attacks. But recently, after COVID and losing Frank and family changes, I was just a mess. Plus, trying to adapt to vision impairment.
A lot of changes.
Right, big changes.
Yeah.
So I see a wonderful counselor, and she gets my spirituality. But I had collected all these journals before I met her, and I took out the things that related to the book, put those in folders, so I had my chronological histories that I recorded about my experiences. And I shredded. And I told my husband, I took this bag where I had gathered from every little section, all of it mixed together. I stirred it up. We put it in my little fire. What do you call those?
Fire pit.
Fire pit.
Yeah.
A little clay
like a portable one.
A little clay one my husband bought me. And we stood out on the deck, and I wasn't sure how he was going to take it. But we set this big pile, and I'd come upstairs. I went back upstairs to put it in, and he had already put it in the fireplace, which I thought was kind of cool because he helped me. He helped me let go. And he loaded the fireplace, and I went down to get a bundle of sage and sweetgrass and some tobacco, and I laid it in on top of that. My husband lifted the grate. We put those things down on the thing, and he handed me the lighter. And we lit it, and the sun was just getting ready to set. It was New Year's Eve. And we stood on there and watched the flames, and my hair stands on end to this day. But we set the things on fire, and I turned to my husband and I said, I know that I've hurt you in the past because we all hurt each other. It's human. And I said, I just hope that you'll forgive me for hurting you throughout our years. And I said, I just want you to know I forgive you for the times you hurt me. And then we said nothing else, and we just watched this paper burn, and then all of a sudden the sage caught on fire, and this big woof of white smoke came up over, and you could just do this with it and wash ourselves clean. And that's how I ended my New Year, plus good dinner from a gift card from work. So move ahead 3 months, we're out on the deck, and we forget that we've got these ashes in the fire pit. So I go to take it out, and guess what? The birds had been carrying bird seed, and these little flowers were growing up through the charcoal. And you could still see some of the words. And this little green shoot was coming up through the...
I'm staring at the photo of it right now, actually.
And it came up, and I put it on canvas because it's like you're burning that artwork. New life comes out of that, of the ashes. So you lose somebody you love. Someone... decides you can't do something again, or art or whatever.
Yeah.
We rise from that. I have to rise from my vision impairment, right?
Yeah.
I choose to rise up out of that. I choose to be strong. I have days when I'm not strong.
And that's okay.
It is okay. But I give myself grace on those days. And I think that's what we need to do, is give grace to ourselves, to our loved ones who want to be creative. Support your friends. Send them a card of encouragement, a hand-painted note card with a cartoon on it. Even cartoonists have something to offer that really bring joy. That's healing. Laughter's healing. These graphic novels are healing. And so I think that that's the crucial thing, is knowing oneself. My favorite quote is, be still and know. Be still and know. That's what Buddha was about. The Native Americans, when they get up in the morning, would offer prayers and just stand there, for the sun to come up and to just embrace a new day. It's always a new beginning. You die at night when the sun sets, and then new life comes in the morning when the sun rises. And that was one of the things I really appreciate about the Native American culture, is every day is a new day to create again, design again.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think something that just came to mind was you don't necessarily need to finish something, but it's good to have a resolution,
Right. Right.
if that makes sense.
Right. And not the kind that you have to, I'm not going to ever eat this again. Or
Oh,
do
not that kind
no.
of resolution, but like a musical resolution,
Right,
where things
right.
resolve into the right key,
Right.
where things fall into place.
Right.
Gosh, we could talk for hours,
I know.
and I do think I'll be posting, like, I want to talk to you more on Zoom when I'm back out in California.
I hope so.
Just have chats. But
I'd like to do mother-son things where we can maybe work with other artists too to encourage them and to talk about this. Yeah, reach out to us because we need to hear what you're thinking about this. I think there's a movement. Excuse me. The politics have been pretty bad. And I've attended an international forum on the arts, and it was supposed to be a bridge building thing, but the politics was horrible. And it was bashing America, bashing this, bashing each other. You're stealing from us. And that's not what creativity is about. Creativity is about expressing oneself and sharing it with the world. And those that get it, get it. Those that don't waste your energy worrying about it. Love yourself enough to just give yourself that time to make it, even if it's a 5 or 10 minute art making moment.
Yeah.
And then share it. Share it with somebody else. Get a group where you sit and just paint together. Our Parkinson's group did after I left. We all got together and we just sit and paint.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to be on social media either. Just share it with someone else.
Keep it simple,
Yeah.
And love yourself. That's the biggest thing. Is I think I love myself more.
Yeah, you do.
I do.
Yeah.
I look in the mirror some days and I think, hey. I don't recognize myself with one eye and wrinkles.
I know. Gosh, when I cut my hair, I have all this white that I was like, oh.
Right. But I look in the mirror and I like who I am.
Yeah.
I love who I am.
Yeah.
Warts and all.
Yeah.
And whether I do art that pleases everybody or not, when I get up in the morning, I'm happy. When I get up in the morning, I feel blessed and grateful that I have a studio that I can paint in. And, I just feel grateful. I'm so grateful to share my art and have this moment with you.
I know. I'm grateful that you would share it with me.
I know.
Thank you for having this 2-hour conversation.
I know you'd hug.
We can hug, the mics, hopefully. For all of you who would like to see more work by my mother, by Vickie Leigh Krudwig, you can go to harmonyhousestudio.com to see her paintings, and you can also purchase the books that she has for sale. You can look for searching for Chipita, which is a story of Chipita and her life. Oh,
she was a humanitarian.
Yeah, she was amazing. So you can pick up Searching for Chipita. Then the book about your experiences writing this and your art making, Walking with Chipita, as well as Keeper of the Pipe, which is a book written by John Inman, as well as co-written and edited by her. Right. And then soon there will be the Spiritual Alchemy workbook that will be available. That's a self-guided
it's to kind of get you jump-started.
Yeah, it's an exploration in yourself.
Yeah, because there's some tremendous books, and I do list a bunch of them.
Oh, you have a great resource in the back.
Because these books have had a huge impact on me and have made the difference for me moving forward.
Yeah. So
these are thoughts that I've shared in the workshops, and I hope to actually do some Zoom workshops. So if you're interested, please let us know, and we'll put you on a list. You can do a following. Is that right?
I mean, you can follow here, but we'll put like a little newsletter up or something.
Yes, I'd like to do a newsletter. I think that would be cool.
Like, please notify me when this happens, because it'll take a little bit of time to organize, but it's great. I took the class last year, so it was awesome.
We had artists that were weavers, dancers,
photographers, gardeners. Yep. Yeah, it's not just for artists. It's
a museum curator.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was
good
really
for you
exciting.
to understand yourself a little bit more, which I think we could all use. So
what we do matters. And
it is.
And it's spiritual.
Yeah. So thank you all for watching this.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Again, if you liked this, please give a thumbs up and subscribe. I hate doing that, but it's part of the job. We'll be talking more. And if you want more of her as well, You can go to our conversation on art and aging from, I think, 3 years ago now.
Oh, yeah, that's
so
right.
that was a really great
That's
conversation that we had during the pandemic.
Right.
So thank you all.
Thank you.
Love you lots.
And
stay happy and healthy.
Yes, and have a wonderful, happy new year.
Yeah.
Full of creativity, peace, and well-being.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you. I love you.
I love you too. Don't say that. I cry.
Here, I'm going to take your mic real quick.
Oh. We really talked a lot.
I know.
I'm sure you're going to have to edit and edit and edit.
I'll edit a little bit.